Did you ever say anything that made the landlord aware that those children were living with you at that time?
Yeah.
How have you felt about the Beers living below you?
Stressed, because as soon as they moved in, they started accusing Gus of having the kids jumping off the balcony onto our AC unit, and it's been downhill ever since.
Have your kids ever jumped off the balcony?
No, ma'am.
Did Ms. Agua ever request to you to add those additional children as allowed occupants on the lease?
No, sir. And state to her and Jonathan that with the one bedroom that they are in right now, that they could not have 3 children plus them 2 living in the apartment. I did tell them both.
A tenant accused of stuffing 5 people into a 1-bedroom, flouting lease rules, and blaming everyone else, to a landlord dragging her to court over unauthorized pets, neighbor complaints, and a trashed apartment. Let's see how Judge Middleton handles this messy clash between JDR companies and Ashley Myers.
All right, we'll go back on the record. In this case, it's a termination of tenancy trial in the matter of JDR Companies LLC versus Ashley Agua, also known as Ashley Myers. Mr. Lance Thornton is here for the plaintiff, and their manager and owner are here. And Ms. Meg Bauer from Legal Aid is here on behalf of the defendant, Ashley, who is present. We took quite a bit of testimony on our last date, and we weren't able to finish for a combination of reasons. And we rescheduled the matter for continuing hearing to today. I believe the plaintiff had rested, or at least it finished direct of the defendant, and it's time for cross of the defendant. Ms. Myers, good morning. Where are you?
I'm at Miss Bauer's office.
That's what I thought. Sometime before you were born, I was an intern at Legal Aid in the summer of 1979 while I was a law student, and I organized that library that you're sitting in front of. It was a disaster. None of the pocket part, no one even knows what a pocket part is, but that library was a mess. One of my jobs 40 plus years ago was to organize that. So people don't use books much anymore, but I've sat in that very spot where you're sitting, only it was about 40 years ago, more than that. At any rate, good morning to all, Ms. Bauer and Mr. Thornton. We had finished the direct under great stress, and we continue the matter today. Ms. Bauer, although she's your client, she was called by the plaintiff, so this is technically cross-examination. Are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, you may proceed. Well, I'm going to swear you in once again. Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm any testimony you're about to give would be true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Now, I did organize those books. I did not organize the books behind Mr. Thornton. He's on his own with that.
Do you know what a pocket part is?
Believe it or not, I've used the pocket part since starting Legal Aid. But because they were so well organized, I knew exactly where to find it.
Okay, Ms. Myers, go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Agua. To try to pick up where we left off from, I had asked you about your children. So will you remind the court who your children are?
Yes, Josiah, who is 2, Jaden, who is 7, and Ava, who is 9.
And one of your children has oppositional defiance disorder. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe you mentioned that in your response on direct.
Mm-hmm.
Jaden, okay. And does he have an official diagnosis of oppositional defiance disorder?
Your
Yes.
Honor, if I could just have my objection to the relevancy of all this.
All right.
And what is it, or can you articulate, Mr. Thornton? Well, you did last time, I guess. I won't waste the court's time. Okay. When you, living with a child with oppositional defiance disorder creates additional noise, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have a duty to your children to ensure their safety, is that correct?
Yes.
And is there a concern when you have a child with oppositional defiance disorder that the safety of your other children becomes an increasing concern if he's having an episode?
Yes.
Does that create additional noise?
Yes.
Could that noise include you speaking to your children?
Yes.
If you did not separate, and I apologize if you all can hear the train in the background from both of us, but if you did not get involved in those incidents, is it possible that there would be harm to your children as a result of your child with oppositional defiance disorder?
Yes.
So you have a parental duty to be involved and to protect all of your children. Is that correct?
Correct.
Have you found it difficult, or how has it been to live with and maintain a quiet, to maintain your household with the neighbors reporting, the downstairs neighbors that we heard from last time, reporting you to management? What is that like for you?
It's extremely stressful. I'm worried about every little noise that's being made.
Have you, do you have...
Can I stop you for just a moment?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning. Daniel, we're in the middle of a trial. What case are you here on?
How do you say that? ROEHM. I was in Peace Court and he said he didn't have it, so assumed it was you. It's on my calendar. I was just looking it up to make sure it wasn't incorrectly put on the calendar.
It's not on my calendar.
Oh, I guess I better look into this. Well, then I will get off here and see what's going on.
Thank you. I'm sorry. That was one of our probation agents logging in for a case that apparently isn't set. I'm sorry, go ahead.
As someone who hopefully won't be in that situation, but could be, I appreciate that you didn't leave him sitting there for the duration of the trial. Ms. Agua, if you receive a judgment today, will you be homeless?
Yes.
Again, Your Honor, I'd object to relevancy of for future living arrangements.
All right, I'll allow the answer. It is arguably not relevant to the fact that they wish to terminate her tenancy. You can argue it at some later point, but that happens very often. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, whether it's relevant to whether there's sufficient facts to terminate her tenancy, it's not. It may go to some other argument that you have, but one of the concerns is she didn't list these children on the lease and she's in a one-bedroom apartment. And so they weren't supposed to move in the first place, and now there she is, and it's difficult for all concerned. But the plaintiff's going to contend she never should have been in a second-floor, one-bedroom apartment if she hadn't moved these other tenants in without permission of the landlord. But I understand your position. All right, you go ahead.
I guess, Your Honor, I think I believe that these questions are relevant given the court's equitable jurisdiction in landlord-tenant cases, and that the fact having any relevance to make a fact more or less true. This was leading to my response to the very questions you've drawn, so I will just proceed in that direction. Ms. Agua, when did your children end up living with you full-time?
Ava and Jaden, about the end of August, beginning of September of 2020.
And those are the two children, this would be up to the plaintiff to argue, but those are the two children, in your understanding, that are not on the lease, is that?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that was in August of 2020?
Yeah, end of August. Yeah, end of August, beginning of September.
And did you ever say anything that made the landlord aware that those children were living with you at that time?
Yes.
So they knew back in August of 2020 that you had two additional children living in your apartment.
Correct.
And did you know that they were at that time when you informed them of that knowledge? Did you get the impression that they weren't allowed or welcome in the property?
No.
Okay. So it's almost as if they consented to them being on the property back in August of 2020. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or is that your impression?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason, I believe you testified on direct, the reason that these two children ended up living with you is because you had no other choice.
Correct.
And do you believe that you have a do you have a duty to your children?
Of course.
To provide them housing?
Yes.
Shelter? Yeah. Okay. And so you had no other choice, and the landlord was aware of their presence back in August of 2020.
Correct.
As far as you're aware, based on what you told them. Okay. So the other things that we, again, kind of addressed this, but because of the interruption, I'll go back a little bit without redundancy, hopefully, is the police reports that have been filed and that were discussed, I guess, or police being called. Were any arrests ever made as a result of any of the police interactions at your apartment?
No.
Were any charges ever filed against anyone as a result of activity that happened?
No.
Did you feel that did you ever call law enforcement out of a need to protect your safety?
Yes.
So is it your impression that you would be allowed to call law enforcement to protect your safety?
Yes. I would hope so.
And have you ever been accused of having drugs on the property or of manufacturing drugs?
No.
And have you ever been accused of prostitution or
No.
engaging in prostitution in the facility or the property?
No.
As far as you're aware, or as far as you have been involved, have any of the police reports involved any of the other tenants in the building other than Mr. Mailer?
No.
Okay. To step backwards for just a minute, are your children sublessees of you? Because paragraph 10, which is cited in the complaint as the reason for termination, or as what you violated, says that you're not allowed to have any sublessee in the apartment. Do you have anyone subleasing from you?
No.
Are your children sublessees?
No.
Okay. And how many people are living in the apartment right now?
Just myself and the children.
So there are not two adults in the household anymore?
Not anymore.
Okay. And why is that there are no longer two adults in the household?
John moved out on January 2nd.
And the landlord was made aware of that as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And that is because you had violent issues or issues with his violence.
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. And so you are, yeah, okay. How did that affect you? Did that drastic change have an effect on your temperament?
Yes.
Can you elaborate?
January was just a stressful month, with that being the start of everything.
What specifically do you mean by that being the start of everything?
Well, we didn't have so many issues until he left for some reason. Then they wanted a separate application and started talking about eviction. I wasn't sure why. And then just the chaos that the apartment was left in, and then everything that just me and the kids getting sick, just in quarantine, all of it.
Yeah. Is it true that when you told your landlord that John had left, the very first thing they asked you was whether you could afford your apartment without him?
Correct.
Almost as if he was more important or more valuable than you were, than your safety
I'll
was?
object to that, Your Honor.
Yeah, that calls.
Okay. When John left, did he take things with him?
Yes. Some things, what he could take at the time, yes.
Did he do it in an orderly fashion?
No.
Did he throw things around
Yes.
and leave things out of place?
Yes.
And it's true, based on your testimony of one of the police reports last time, that you have tried to clean things up in the apartment, and he has intentionally thwarted your ability to do that, right? For example, with the cereal bowl that you mentioned.
Correct.
And this inspection that the plaintiff hasn't really talked about, but I think they're going to talk about, occurred around the time that John left, right?
Correct.
Okay. And did you see him, or I guess, did he remove the dresser in the closet?
No, I removed it.
You removed it, okay. And did you take some of his things to him subsequent to this event?
Yes.
Okay.
And just got rid of things that we didn't need as much as possible.
And is it true that 2 days before the last hearing, you were mopping the floors and washing the walls in your apartment because you had cleaned it?
Yes.
So there is no, yeah. And so to that point, I guess, did you ever have any pests or any rodents in your apartment? No. Were you ever accused of having anything like that?
No.
So have you ever been informed of a problem arising from your maintenance of the home?
Not prior to that, no.
Okay, yeah, okay. Okay, and when we heard from the Beers, Mr. and Mrs. Beers, last time, they lived below you, right?
Correct.
Did you have issues with noise reports before they moved in?
No.
Are you able to hear them?
Yes.
Can you tell me about that, or tell the court about that?
Yeah, mostly it's just Mrs. Beers yelling at Mr. Beers, I would assume, through the floor. Yeah.
Is that at all times of the day? Or does that include when your children are sleeping? Or trying to sleep?
Yeah, sometimes at night, around 10 o'clock, 10:30.
So is it safe to say that, or I guess, how have you felt about the Beers living below you? For what reason?
Because as soon as they moved in, they started accusing us of having the kids jumping off the balcony onto our AC unit. And it's been downhill ever since.
Have your kids ever jumped off the balcony?
No, ma'am.
Is there a fence guarding your balcony or blocking? Like, would your children have to jump over a fence?
Yeah, over the rail.
Have you ever seen them over the rail?
No.
You said that you started having issues after the Beers moved in, after Mr. and Mrs. Beers.
That's correct.
Have you reported to the landlord any other noise issues in your building?
Yes.
Are you aware that, or to your knowledge, or have they ever told you that they've addressed those issues?
No.
Can you tell me about the noise issues?
Yeah, the two people who live across from me play loud music at night. The man next to me is very loud with his voice, and Mrs. Beers with her yelling underneath me.
So there's a lot of other noise in your apartment, not just children.
Correct.
Yeah. And is it hard to raise your children around that noise? Do you feel that management has treated you differently?
Yes.
And they objected to that. Okay. So I'll just conclude by making sure that I understand that your issues arose primarily after the Beers moved in and after John left, and you did not have any issues with management prior to that.
No, ma'am.
Using domestic violence as a distraction from lease violations is crazy. I mean, lots of noise complaints and unauthorized occupants, but she's the victim? See, there's no smoke without fire. So do you think she's innocent, or are her neighbors truly accusing her and the kids?
So I'll just conclude by making sure that I understand that your issues arose primarily after the Beers moved in and after John left, and you did not have any issues with management prior to that.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, I will, I think, suspend my cross-examination, but reserve the opportunity or the potential to recall Ms. Myers as a rebuttal witness at the end of plaintiff's case in chief, if that's permissible.
All right. We'll see where we go, if there's anything to rebut. Mr. Thornton, do you have any other questions for Ms. Myers?
I do not, Your Honor.
I have a couple. Ms. Myers, you said, well, sometime this winter, I wasn't clear, I think February, you caught a carpool to Chattanooga. When was that?
Yes, Your Honor. I left on January 27th and came back the following Monday.
January 27th was a
Wednesday, I believe.
Wednesday, and you came back February 1st?
Yes.
What did you do with the children?
The children were with my grandmother and my mom.
Where do they live?
My grandma lives in Berrien Springs and my mom lives in St. Joe.
What did you do with the cats while you were gone?
They were at my mom's as well.
All right. Does that raise questions for anyone else?
It does not, Your Honor.
Your Honor, can I just ask Ms. Myers to elaborate on her purpose of going to Chattanooga?
I don't know if that's relevant.
Okay, I wasn't.
That's why I didn't ask it. But I was primarily interested in what she did with the cats while she was gone for 5 days. Okay, that finishes the cross-examination of the defendant. Mr. Thornton, you ready to proceed further with your case in chief?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may call your next witness.
I would call Josie Legger.
Can I ask that they isolate? Or just like we did with Mr. and Mrs. Beers, it seems that the two witnesses are together and there's a risk of influential testimony.
I suppose that's probably the safest thing to do. Josie, we'll leave you there. Trish, if you would go to another room while she's testifying.
Yes, Your Honor.
It's called sequestration. It's a word you don't use much in regular speech, but in legal terms it means making the witnesses wait while another witness testifies outside of the room. All right, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm any testimony you're about to give here will be true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you state your name and spell your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Josie Leger Moreno. My first name is spelled Josi. Last name is spelled Legermoreno.
All right, thank you. Mr. Thornton?
I'm going to, for simplicity purposes, if the court doesn't mind, refer to Josie rather than her last name. Josie, how long have you been are you the manager of Vista Point Apartments, LLC here in Sturgis?
I am, yes.
How long have you held that position?
Officially for about a year now, but I have been working with the company for about 2 years.
So, but in that apartment complex, you've been the manager about a year?
Yes.
So that take you back to roughly March of 2020?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So are you familiar and know who, prior to this trial, did you know Ashley Agua?
Yes, she is one of our tenants there at Vista Point.
Can you, the apartment complex has a lease with Miss Agua, is that correct?
Yes, her and Jonathan Mailer.
Okay. Is that lease the lease that has been submitted with the court and was attached to the complaint dated May 1 of 2020?
Yes, sir.
It was obviously dated May 1 of 2020.
Your Honor, can I object to leading questions because Mr. Thornton is on direct?
Certainly. I didn't catch any. Perhaps it makes things go faster. But try not to ask leading questions. When I was the prosecutor, the most common question I asked was, what happened next? But it certainly makes things go faster when you lead, but it presupposes the answer. So try not to lead.
Josie, when does the lease with Ms. Agua expire?
It is supposed to expire May 1st of 2021.
Okay. Is Vista Point willing to renew that lease?
At the moment, no, we are not.
Objection to relevance. This isn't a non-renewal.
Yeah, same issue. He had the other side of the coin. So the objection is legitimate, but it may not be relevant whether they're willing to renew the lease, but it may be. I'll note your objection and sustain it. And I guess everybody's on notice.
And I'm not trying to be obstructionist.
You're just doing your job, so we'll go ahead.
Who signed the lease, Josie?
It was my manager, Patricia Brown.
And who signed on behalf of tenants?
It was Jonathan and Ashley were the ones who signed the lease.
And how many people were expected to occupy the apartment?
At the time that we signed the lease, Jonathan and Ashley just made me aware that them two were going to be occupying the apartment with their small child, who at the time I believe was 1.
You know the name of the child that was about 1 when the lease was signed?
His name, I want to say his name was Josiah, I believe was the child.
Does the lease specifically specify how many people can occupy the apartment?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Does the lease specifically provide how many people can occupy the apartment?
How many people can occupy a one-bedroom apartment?
Yes.
The lease doesn't state in there how many people can occupy a one-bedroom apartment, but I did state to them that it was just supposed to be them three and no other one.
Josie, do you have a copy of the lease in front of you?
Yeah.
Could you look at paragraph 1 of the lease, please?
You want me to read it?
Not the whole paragraph. If you had a chance to look at it?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you again, does the lease specify how many people are to occupy the apartment?
For their specific apartment, yes, it does state that there are 2 people occupying the apartment.
Does that include the children?
No, not the one child that they told me about.
So the 2 adults?
Yes.
Let me stop. The lease I show says 3 people. That looks like it'd been whited out or something or photocopied. Paragraph 1, number of people to occupy the property. What does your lease say, Ms. Moreno?
The copy that I have in front of me just states 2.
Copy that I have states 3, but it looks like it was whited out or something and written over.
Now, the copy I have, Your Honor, that was submitted with the complaint, obviously, which is why you have it, it does state 3.
Oops, that's a red flag. I mean, if the landlord did alter it, that's shady AF. Judge Middleton's face just says it all. Y'all think I was born yesterday?
And that is the copy of the lease that I am working from as well.
Yeah, you got the same we do. So I don't know. At some point it was altered, apparently.
Interesting.
When, Josie, did you become aware at some point that more than 3 people were occupying the apartment?
I had spoken to Jonathan Mailer about some complaints that we were getting about additional children living there, but when I had spoken to him, he told me that they were children that he had partial custody of and that they were only there for 2 days at a time over the weekend, and they were not there for more than 2 days.
When did that discussion occur?
I believe sometime back in August.
Did you have any further discussions with either Mr. Mailer or Ms. Agua about unauthorized occupants?
Not about unauthorized occupants, no.
When did you become aware at some point that more than 3 people were occupying the apartment?
Yes, later on down the line, maybe about a month or 2 later, when the complaint we started to get a lot more complaints about it. One time I was on the property, I had seen the children. I had contacted Jonathan again, he did not answer. And then that's when Ashley had contacted me. She did say that the other 2 children were living there, but she told me that she thought Jonathan had made me aware of it. And I had explained to her that he never informed me of these other kids living there full time, that I was told about it, that they were only there over the weekend for 2 days at the very most.
Do you recall when that discussion with Ms. Agua occurred?
I wouldn't know the exact date. I would say maybe sometime around October.
Have you personally witnessed the Ms. Agua's other 2 children around the apartment complex?
I have seen them around the apartment complex several different times. They're usually outside playing. I've even seen them sometimes walk from the 1015 building over to the park that's behind the Meadow Apartments.
Did Ms. Agua ever request to you to add those additional children as allowed occupants on the lease?
No, sir. And I did state to her and Jonathan that with the 1 bedroom that they are in right now, that they could not have 3 children plus them 2 living in the apartment. I did tell them both.
When did you do that?
Probably around October, the time that I had spoken to her.
And whatever happened after you told them that?
She told me that they were going to stay there, they had nowhere else to go, and that was the end of that. I did tell her that if we found out that they were continuing to live there, then we would have to proceed on with court.
What, does the tenants have pets without written authorization?
No, I have to be notified about all pets living in the units.
Under the lease with Ms. Agua, does she have the apartment complex's written permission to have pets in the apartment?
No, we were not aware of any pets in the apartment at the time of the lease, and we were not made aware of any pets afterwards. Even after we have been in contact with both her and Jonathan multiple times, they never told me anything about a pet.
Which would include never asking for authorization to have the pets.
Yes, sir.
So we can assume the apartment complex has never granted authorization for pets to stay in this apartment with Miss Agua.
Correct.
Asked and answered. Well, I guess that was a leading
Well,
question. So it was
he asked
stated.
I'll accept the answer.
Are tenants that have pets required to have renter's insurance?
We do not require them to have renter's insurance. We recommend it, but they are required to pay a monthly pet fee of $25 and then to place a $250 pet deposit down per pet.
Has that happened in this case with Ms. Agua?
No, sir.
Your Honor, before we get too far away from that lease, I would, it was attached to the complaint, but I'd move for admission of the lease as evidence in this case.
Since we're all operating on the same lease, I'll accept it, but we're gonna use the 3 occupants lease rather than 2. Is that acceptable, Ms. Bauer?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the lease is admitted as plaintiff's exhibit number 1.
Josie, have you received complaints, noise complaints from other tenants about the occupants of Miss Agua's apartment?
Yes, sir, I have.
Can you tell us how many such complaints you've received while Ms. Agua's been there?
How many exactly? There's been so many, honestly, sir. I wouldn't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I do know that there have been 2 other complaints from 2 other tenants there in that building about her and about the noise.
Who else has complained? Put names with who's complained.
We have received a complaint from a Matt Sanders. He lives in that building in B1. And then from a Rob Blair, who is the neighbor next door to her in B2.
Have you received more than one complaint from these individuals?
I have, yes.
Do you know approximately how many complaints from each one?
Mr. Blair has probably called me about, we've talked in person on 3 different occasions about the noise. And then he has called me 3 other times when I was not in the office to make those complaints. And then Matt Sanders in B1, he has complained to me twice about kids being left in the hallway.
And have Mr. and Mrs. Beers that testified previously, have they contacted you about noise complaints?
Yes.
How many times have they contacted you about noise complaints?
They have probably contacted me probably well over a dozen times, just because they do live directly underneath her, so they can hear the majority of the noise.
12 plus noise complaints don't materialize out of thin air. That many reports mean one thing. This isn't occasional kid noise. This is daily chaos. And seriously, I just have to say that 5 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment is outrageous. She can't control the kids.
Have you received noise complaints from Ms. Agua?
Noise complaints? I only received 1 noise complaint from her regarding the person who lived across from her, which was, they no longer live there anymore. And that was the only complaint that I had received from her. And that was probably back in September. And I did address it. And after that, she's never complained to me about anything before.
How and when did you address it in relationship to when you received the complaint from Ms. Agua?
Well, she had brought up the complaint to me because we were speaking on previously about something else. And she had brought it up to me. So I told her I would take care of it, and I did address the tenant who lives across from them and just asked for them to turn down their music, which from my understanding they did. And after that, we never had any issues after that.
Have you personally witnessed loud noises or disturbances coming from the Agua apartment?
There have been 2 or 3 times when I have gone into the building and have heard her shouting before. During those instances, I've always tried to knock on her door and just ask her to keep it down.
Can you give us some approximate dates on when those were, how far apart, or when they occurred?
Exact date? I wouldn't know the exact dates off the top of my head. No. I know the most recent one was not due to a noise complaint. The most recent one was probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It wasn't due to a noise complaint, but the kids' bikes were just laid in the hallway randomly, so people could not get through to the hallway. So I did go upstairs and ask for her if she could have the kids come down there and pick up their belongings.
And what was her response?
She slammed the door in my face, and then I proceeded to hear her scream at her children because I had knocked on the door and she was upset at them.
Have you personally witnessed any confrontations, either verbally or physically, between Ms. Agua and other tenants?
Yes, with Daniel Beers. I did witness her one time. This was probably maybe over a month now. I was outside. Judy Beers had walked over to tell me that they had gotten into an altercation with Miss Ashley. And she asked if I could just speak to Ashley and just make sure that, to keep the peace until we got everything resolved and just have Ashley not speak to them. And I told Judy not to speak to her as well and just to keep their distance. During that time that Judy had came out and spoke to me, Daniel, I believe, was outside of the building sitting on the chair. I want to say he was having a cigarette, I believe. She was taking out some trash, and on her way in, I glanced over there, and the next thing you know, I see her yelling at him. I'm not sure what was said exactly because I was too far away to hear. All I could see was that she was yelling at him and he was sitting down in the chair.
And Your Honor, I want to just object to the hearsay elements that the evidence, I presume, is offered to prove what Ms. Leje Moreno witnessed, but not for the truth of the statements made by Ms. Beers, or whether those statements were made or.
We don't know what was said, but she testified, this is not hearsay, it's direct evidence. She saw her yelling at her.
I meant the part where
Whether she was yelling happy birthday or whatever.
The part where Ms. Beers said that there had been something.
Oh, well, that's not to prove the truth of the matter asserted. All right, yes, note that. Thank you, go ahead.
Any other instances, Josie, that you witnessed?
That I have witnessed, no.
Have you been aware of any problems with Ms. Agua's children in the complex?
Yes, we have gotten complaints from neighbors and tenants saying that the children are playing outside unaccompanied with an adult, which I have witnessed them walking over to the park before without an adult. People have also complained about the children being left in the hallway unaccompanied without an adult, and that it has looked like that.
I'd like to state some hearsay objections. You've received complaints of these, whether they've happened or not.
All right, I'll note your objection.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And these tenants were complaining that Ashley had walked out of the building without the children. The children were still left in the hallway. And then we also got complaints about the loud noises of the children jumping up and down in the apartment, and then them jumping off of the balcony.
And just for clarification, what have you personally witnessed? Any problems with Ms. Agua's children within the complex?
The only issue that I have witnessed with them that I have addressed to her was my concern about them playing outside without an adult and walking all the way to another side of the complex, behind that complex and to the park, where you would not be able to watch them from her apartment. It's impossible.
And you did address that with Ms. Agua?
Yes.
What was her response?
Every time that I tried to speak to her about it, she starts yelling at me. She says that her children are allowed to play outside without an adult, that they are old enough to do so. And I've stated to her that they are not. It does state in our lease that anybody under the age of 17 playing outside does have to be accompanied by an adult.
Let's be real. This is textbook problematic tenant behavior. When the property manager approaches you with legitimate concerns, the adult response isn't indignation and slamming doors. It's, I hear you, or I'll work on solutions. Imagine if every parent in the complex let their kids run wild and then cried discrimination when called out.
What, about how many, discussions have you had with Ms. Agua during her stay there at the apartment complex?
Probably well over a dozen. It's been mainly through text messaging, just because every time I've tried to call her, she's not able to talk on the phone. I'm not sure for what reason. She's not able to. So she has always stated to me that texting is best for her. So to try and to better communicate with her, I've always texted with her.
Have any of those, other than you've already described, have any of those discussions, face-to-face discussions, ended in loud voices or screaming?
Yes, they have.
Could you describe that, please?
Well, like I said, what, for example, when the whole bike situation with the kids had the bikes in the hallway, she did yell and she slammed the door in my face about that. When I had approached her about the day that she was yelling at Mr. Beers outside, and I had approached her about that, she was also shouting at me before the cop arrived. And then when he arrived, she was being very loud too when he was there.
Have you had any issues with Miss Agua as far as telephone contact or texts that you would describe as inappropriate?
Yes, a few times actually. There's been a few times that I did try to talk to her just about some complaints that I were getting from tenants. So my protocol is that I would, whenever I would get these complaints from tenants or neighbors, I would try and contact her immediately to address these issues. Every time that I would contact her and address them, she would constantly start sending me voice messages or text messages, calling me names or just being very upset.
Your Honor, I would, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Ms. Moreno, but Your Honor, I would actually object on relevance because none of this has been pled in the complaint. There's nothing that has been pled about treatment of management. So I guess I object on that to this line of questioning about the personal interactions.
I'll note your objection, but I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Were you done, Josie, or?
Yeah, just about, yeah.
So, have you ever seen the police at Miss Agua's apartment?
The only time that I actually witnessed the police there was the time that she was yelling at Mr. Beer. Other than that, the only times that I was made aware that the cops were there were from other tenants that called me to let me know that the cops were there and wanting to know what was going on.
In getting ready for this hearing, did you try to obtain police reports?
Yes, we did.
When you say we, who's we?
Me and my manager, Patricia Brown.
And how did you go about obtaining those police reports?
Well, we do every month. We get, I guess, call reports from the police department. They do send to us. So I went over those, looked over all the call incidents that they were called out to her specific unit. I highlighted them. I went over them with my manager, Patricia Brown, and then from there we filled out a form from the police department to obtain all the police reports for her unit.
And did you obtain reports from the police department?
We did, yes.
And you provided those to me?
Yes.
And those are the ones we submitted to the court?
Yes, sir.
And the ones we've heard previous testimony about?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, based on Josie's testimony, I'd move for admission of the police reports.
I have no objection to that.
All right. All the police reports will be Exhibit 2.
Did there come a time when you inspected Miss Agua's apartment?
Yes, we did inspect her apartment once.
When did that happen?
I believe it was on January 27th of 2021.
Did you give prior notice to the inspection to Miss Agua that it was going to take place?
Yes, and she was made aware of that because she did contact me that morning via text message to let me know that she was going to be out of town until Monday. She told me that we were allowed to go into her place and not to touch anything.
What was that inspection for?
It was for the city inspection. It was me, my maintenance guy, David, and then the city inspector, Tim.
How long before the inspection, do you know how that she had notice of the inspection?
She had at least a week's notice.
And you personally went into the apartment on January 27th?
Yes.
Did anybody else enter the apartment?
Me and David, because he did have to check the smoke detector to make sure it was working properly, and I am not tall enough to reach it.
Who is David?
He is our maintenance guy.
What's David's last name? Can you describe what you saw when you entered the apartment?
Upon opening her apartment door, Tim, the city inspector, did stop and ask me if anybody was occupying the apartment because of the condition that it looked. It was very messy. There was clothes, food, and trash everywhere. So it did not look like somebody was occupying it at the moment, but I did inform him that there was somebody occupying the apartment because she had just contacted me that morning to let me know that she was going to be out of town. So upon seeing the apartment, I go in there to make sure all the smoke detectors are working and to see if there was anything blocking her water heater in the closet of the master bedroom. That is part of the city inspection. The smoke detectors were working properly, but there were belongings in front of the heater.
Did you take any photos during your inspection?
I did, yes, because of the condition that her apartment was in. And then we also saw cat litter boxes, and we were not aware that she had any animals in the apartment.
And those photos were taken on January 27th during that inspection?
Yes, sir.
Did you take the photos?
I did, yes, with our company phone.
Are those the photos that you provided to my office
Yes, sir.
and that I in turn provided to the court?
Yes, sir.
Do those photos that you took that day accurately represent the condition of the apartment on January 27th of
Yes, sir.
2021?
Yes, sir.
You didn't change or rearrange or do anything in the apartment, you just simply took the photos of what was there?
Yes, sir. If I did touch anything in the apartment, the only thing that I did was open up a closet door.
I would move for admission of the photos that have been submitted to the court.
I have 5. Is that what you're asking to admit?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Bauer, you want any voir dire on the photos?
No, and Mr. Thornton already asked this, or used those photos in this trial, so I have no reason to object.
All right. Well, we're going to admit the picture of the trash can as 3A. The refrigerator and the kitchen area will be 3B. The dining room table with a high chair in it is 3C. The floor in that area with a broomstick and a bunch of debris on the floor will be 3.5 or 3D. And then the final picture, it has a box fan and a lot of debris on the floor. It's hard to even tell what everything is. Will be 3F.
Did the court not receive a picture of the bathroom with the cat litter box?
Well, I have 5 pictures. Are there more than 5?
There was a 6th picture of the bathroom showing a kitty litter box. It'd have the toilet front and center.
Yeah, there it is. It was got on the bottom. That will be G, 3G. It shows a bathroom with some things hanging in the tub and a soiled rug and a kitty litter box next to the toilet. So 3 A, B, C, D, E, F, G admitted. All right, thank you.
Josie,
Wait a minute, I got my numbers mixed up. A, B, C is the table, D is the floor, is the mess with the box fan, and F is the bathroom. All right, all those 6 photographs are admitted.
Josie, did you ever address the condition of the apartment with Ms. Agua?
Yes.
Tell us how you addressed it and what happened.
I ended up contacting her via text message, letting her know that we did conduct a city inspection and nothing was touched. And then I did inform her of the condition of her apartment, that I was not very happy with it. And she proceeded on to not care. She said that's just how her apartment was. It's not like that all the time, and that's how it would be.
How did it smell?
It did smell like cat urine.
Does Ms. Agua qualify to continue to rent this apartment without Mr. Mailer being a tenant?
Again, I object on relevant purposes.
Of course, she doesn't qualify. 5 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, unauthorized cats, dirtiness, and uncontrolled kids. Nah, it's a no, that's a nightmare tenant. Please, she needs to move out and get a bigger space.
Well, I think it's relevant. If she doesn't qualify, then that's relevant to whether they want to continue the tenancy. It's the other side of the coin of the issues you're trying to get in, which are equitable issues. You may answer the question.
No, I do not believe she would qualify. From my understanding, I do not believe she would.
So she
This is
wouldn't
also
qualify based
speculation.
on income?
Based on income and then the amount of children she has in her apartment, if she wanted to try and get an apartment with us, we would automatically have to put her in a 2-bedroom, and she would have to make 3 times the rent.
All right, let me hear that again. So she'd have to go to a 3-bedroom apartment or 2-bedroom,
Yes, the 2-bedroom.
and that costs more?
It does. The 2 bedrooms are $775 a month,
How much is a 1-bedroom?
$675 a month.
And a 2-bedroom is $775 per month?
And what would the income standard be again, Josie? What income would she have to show to rent a 2-bedroom?
For a 2-bedroom, she would have to be making at least $2,300 a month.
Has Ms. Agua ever applied for a 2-bedroom apartment?
No, she has contacted me, her and Jonathan, probably back in September, possibly. They did ask for a 2-bedroom to be upgraded to a 2-bedroom. But at the time we did not have any, and I did tell them that.
Did they contact you again after that?
After that, no, I was not made any kind of contact from either one of them about upgrading to a 2-bedroom. The last time she had contacted me was regarding that Jonathan had moved out of the apartment.
When did she contact you about Jonathan moving out of the apartment?
At the beginning of January, I believe. She contacted me via text message. She wanted me to change the locks on the apartment and change the code for the building on Jonathan. And I tried to ask her what was going on, what was the reason for this. I did explain to her that both her and Jonathan are on the lease, so that I would have to speak to both of them in order to get the approval to change the locks, because I couldn't just lock him out of his apartment.
Is there anything else that I have not asked you that you think is relevant or that the court should know with regard to Vista Point's trying to terminate the tenancy of Ms. Agua?
No, sorry, but I believe you hit all the points.
We're going to take a short recess. I would ask if you would look through your texts and get the exact date of when she told you that Jonathan was moving out.
Okay.
Were you able to find the date of the text that the judge was inquiring about?
Yes, I was.
And can you tell us what that date was?
Yes, she texted me on Sunday, January 3rd of 2021 at 7:32 p.m.
And that text was about what? Refresh my memory.
She told me that John was out and that if the code to the front door building could be changed.
So January of this year.
Yes.
Josie, have you tried to inspect Ms. Agua's apartment on any other occasion other than the one you've testified to?
Yes, we did try to conduct a previous inspection to the city inspection. Our company does. We typically try to do our inspection 2 weeks prior to the city inspection to see if there's anything that we can go in there and fix, or if anybody's missing any smoke detectors that they maybe took down. People typically tend to do that. We'll go in there and we'll put them back up and give them a warning not to do these things anymore, not to take them down. We did post a letter to everybody's door that we were going to be conducting our company inspection 2 weeks prior to the city inspection. Ashley did contact me prior to that to inform me that she was confused about the letter and the dates that we were going to be going into the apartment. And she told me that I did not have permission to go in there and that I would not be allowed in for the company inspection.
Any other attempts to inspect other than what you've testified to?
That I have tried, no.
That's all I have, Your Honor. And Josie?
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I please the court?
Yes, just one moment, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's why I asked.
Okay. Ms. Agua, you can discuss this with your attorney about what your position is of having them inspect your apartment during the break at lunchtime. See what the condition of it is today. You can discuss that with her. I'm not sure whether she's agreeable to that or not.
Your Honor.
Go ahead. Josie, you're still under oath. And Ms. Bauer has questions for you on behalf of the defendant.
I do. Your Honor, the point of clarification, or to clarify, you're suggesting that Ms. Agua talked to me about having her landlord inspect her apartment this afternoon?
Oh, right. Today, this morning, or during the lunch hour. We saw what it looked like on January 27th. I'm interested in what it looks like today.
Yeah. I just, we're in Kalamazoo, so I don't know.
Well, she doesn't have to be there. She wasn't there the last time. They have a pass key and they can go in and look at it.
I see. Okay.
All right.
To Ms. Ligia Moreno, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes,
Do you ever go by Ms. Moreno?
I do, yes.
Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me, yes.
Okay. Thank you for taking your time to testify and dealing with my objections. I appreciate your honest and forthright answers today. Thank you. Since we're talking about the inspection, this city inspection around the pictures, those were taken after this lawsuit was filed. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry. Those were taken after this lawsuit was filed. Is that correct?
Yes.
So they should not inform the courts. They should not inform the court for the basis. Well, that's illegal. Withdraw. I apologize, Your Honor. Okay. And so when you filed the lawsuit, at the time the lawsuit was filed, you had only personally attempted to inspect the apartment one time. Is that correct?
Prior to the city inspection, yes.
Well, and the city inspection was after this lawsuit began, right?
Your
Yeah.
Honor, just as a point of clarification, the lawsuit, I don't think was filed until February 17 of 2021. The photos were taken, the testimony was in January 27th, I believe, of 2021. So the photos were actually taken prior to the lawsuit. The notice to quit had been issued prior to the photos.
At this point, I just have to be blunt. Ms. Meyer's lawyer is not just incompetent, but she's fighting a lost game. This woman with her kids and cats all in one bedroom is a safety concern. I don't even want to repeat her excesses in the apartment.
And the notice to quit is a condition precedent to being able to file the suit. It is the notice of quit that gives your client the right to claim possession under the Summary Proceedings Act.
I'm not arguing that point. I'm just point of clarification. The suit wasn't filed till February 17 or after.
All right, thank you.
So on the point of the notice to quit, is it true that when Ms. Agua told you that when she declined your permission, that you told her that fine, you will be in summation, then you will be evicting her. Is that correct?
And I told her it was a violation of her lease to deny us access to her apartment for an inspection.
So at no point in time did you tell her something along the lines of, we'll see you in court?
Don't believe so, no.
Okay. The complaint alleges a violation of paragraph 23 of the lease, which in terms of this inspection and the opportunity to inspect, and it says that, with regards to whether withholding consent is reasonable or not, did Ms. Agua tell you that she was sick when she withheld her consent?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it true that Ms. Agua told you that she was sick when she declined to allow you to enter the apartment?
Yes, she did tell us that she was not feeling too well.
And isn't it also true that the city inspection had already been rescheduled once because of a COVID incident in the building?
Not in the building, just in the
property.
area, but yes.
So it's reasonable to not inspect an apartment if someone is sick during a period, but during COVID, isn't that reasonable?
For COVID, yes, I do know that the city inspector now, because of COVID, he does ask tenants a long list of questions regarding COVID, but during the inspection, we do ask everybody to step out of the apartment so that way we're not in the apartment with them at the time.
So Ms. Agua did not allow you to enter. She said that she didn't give you permission to enter her apartment because she was sick.
Yes, that is what
And
she said.
did you tell her you were going to enter her apartment anyways?
I told her we would come and knock on the door, yes.
You didn't insist.
But we never walked into her apartment, no.
But did you tell her that you were coming?
Yes, I did tell her that we would be coming and knock on her door, yes.
Coming to knock on her door?
Yes.
You did not tell her you were coming to inspect?
Yes, to
you would
inspect
be
her
entering.
apartment, but we would be knocking on her door to inspect the apartment.
Well, just to not waste the court's time, I will not refresh your memory of what you said at this moment. But did anybody else decline to allow you to inspect their apartment as part of this city inspection process?
I would object on relevancy.
I would
Agreed.
counter that my argument is this unfair, unequal treatment, and I have a basis from my question. My question is not arbitrary.
All right, this would be the late January inspection. Did anyone else object?
No, nobody else objected to us going in to inspect their apartment.
Your Honor, I would request permission to share my screen.
You may.
Thank you. The repository for city inspection records of BS&A online is the formal address for the apartment that you manage, Ms. Moreno, 1005 Cato Lane.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I guess,
And-
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to do a foundation objection. If we're going to jump right into asking questions about, I think we need some foundation as to what this document is and who made the document
Yes, it's a business record, but it's not hers. She's trying to impeach the witness's testimony. The witness says, no, nobody else objected. This appears to be something she got off the internet from the Sturgis Police Department, Sturgis City.
I had not offered it as a proposed exhibit yet because I was attempting to lay said foundation by confirming that the address, which is the building address. You, Ms. Moreno, have you ever seen the inspection reports from
Yes.
this? So have you ever, was there a unit that the city attempted to inspect from which the doors were locked?
There was. Are you talking about the 1021A or 1023A4 unit? The main door was locked, but we were actually able to get back into it. And it was not because the tenant was refusing to let us in. They had changed the lock on the bottom door lock and didn't inform us of it. We have taken care of it since then and mastered it and gotten that squared away. But the tenant was actually inside sleeping. She just did not hear us knocking.
So an inspection wasn't completed?
No, we actually went into her apartment. We had to do a re-inspection the second time because we found some violations in her apartment.
And so she changed the locks on her own?
Yes, the bottom lock was changed and it was not mastered to our key.
Would that be a violation of your lease?
It is, and we did handle it, and she did explain to us the reasoning for her changing it. We did notify her, send her a letter letting her know that that is a violation of her lease. She is not allowed to do so, and if it does happen again, that we would be terminating her lease agreement, and since then it has not happened.
You gave her an opportunity to correct.
I don't want to try this other case. They inspected it, she changed the locks, they dealt with it, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on apartment A4.
Understood, Your Honor. Did the city inspector ever inform you that he does not inspect units that are subject to eviction?
No, he did not.
Did the city inspector ever himself inspect Ms. Agua's unit?
He did not. When I opened the door to her apartment the day of the inspection on the 27th, like I said, he did ask me if anybody was occupying the unit. I did inform her that there was somebody there. I did inform him that she had contacted me that morning, that it was just looking like that because that's how she had it. He did not want to go into the apartment because of the way it looked.
Well, so he did not, your testimony is that he did not enter the apartment?
No. He stood right there at the doorway and asked for me and David to go in and check the smoke detector just so he could check that off of his list, which we did go in there and do.
Okay. And there was some testimony a few minutes ago about the water heater. Did other units had concerns with the water heater?
Yes.
Isn't it true that your units are built so that the water heaters are in the closet of the master bedroom where clothes are meant to be stored?
Yes, that is where they are located.
So is it reasonable for a tenant to use the closet?
Absolutely.
And Your Honor, I will stop sharing my screen at this time, and I appreciate that. Okay, I guess, I was going to say, did you make reports or move to evict anyone else for an issue with their water heater?
No, because everybody else, everybody who is in any kind of violation of the city inspection is given a letter to correct those issues so that we can go back in there and re-inspect.
And when so you were able to enter Ms. Agua's apartment then?
Yes.
And you were able to make the changes that you needed to make and observe the things that you needed to observe?
I'm sorry, what?
Well, you testified that you were able to change the smoke detector batteries.
No, we didn't change them. We just checked that they were working, and they were up and properly working.
So you didn't suffer any harm as a result of the state of Ms. Agua's apartment?
Suffer any harm? No, I did not suffer any harm.
As a point of clarification, are we which inspection attempt are we talking about?
I suppose either of them, but my point is they wanted to inspect your apartment and they were able to inspect your apartment and did not receive any violation as a result of inspecting her apartment or not being able to. So it doesn't really matter.
I don't think that was the testimony, Your Honor. I think the testimony was that the city did not get in to inspect this apartment.
But that there was an eviction proceeding and that he doesn't inspect when there's an eviction.
There's no evidence of that. You said that. But I don't know whether that's true or not.
If I could admit my business record, I would.
It's not your business record.
The proposed defendant's proposed record, but okay, that's all right then. I'll withdraw this line of questioning. So, Ms. Moreno, did you and Ms. Agua, what was the relationship like with you and Ms. Agua when she first moved in?
This is a normal relationship that I have with all my other tenants. They pay their rent on time. If they have any issues, they contact me with those issues and I address them. But other than up until the noise complaints started rolling in, I really did not have any contact with her or Jonathan. They were just normal tenants there.
And the noise complaints started rolling in, I believe you testified in around September, October. Is that correct?
I would say more towards the beginning of September, end of August, but yes, they did start rolling in around that time.
And isn't it true that Mr. and Mrs. Beers moved in this fall?
They moved in around September. I don't have their lease in front of me, so I wouldn't know the exact date, but I want to say it was maybe towards the end of September. But the complaints, we were getting a few of them prior to them moving in. It did increase once they moved in because they do live directly below her.
I believe you stated on the record that you received well over, the Beers called you, quote, well over a dozen times just a few minutes ago. Is that a fair summation of your testimony?
Yes, they have contacted me a lot regarding the complaints and noise complaints.
And you also testified that Mr. Mailer and Ms. Agua did ask you about a 2-bedroom apartment.
They did, yes.
And that you didn't have any available.
No.
So is it your testimony that you didn't lease a single 2-bedroom apartment this fall?
That I didn't lease a single 2-bedroom? No, I have leased 2 bedrooms since then.
Then why didn't you contact Ms. Agua and Mr. Mailer if you knew that they were looking for a bigger place?
Well, from my understanding, Jonathan had moved out in January and she wouldn't qualify on her own for not even a 1-bedroom.
But I just asked if you had leased them in the fall.
Yes, in the fall. But again, prior to that, they had asked me only one time about the 2-bedroom. After that, they had never contacted me regarding any 2 bedrooms coming available. I told them if they wanted to, that was absolutely a possibility, but they would also have to make the income for that as well, which I don't even think they would have been able to make.
So you made an assumption about it?
No, I did not make an assumption. I told them that they were more than happy to contact me back. I never got any contact regarding a 2-bedroom after that.
But didn't you tell me that the reason that they didn't get one is because you didn't have one?
Yeah, we didn't have any available at that time. Later on, we did have 1 or 2 probably come available. I wouldn't know exactly which one of those are without my paperwork in front of me.
Okay. You mentioned unaccompanied children under the age of 17 being accompanied. Or actually, let me back up. You mentioned that you became aware of the children, the additional children in the fall, but that they did not sign the lease. Do children normally sign leases?
No, I did not say the children had to sign the lease. I said that they had to be put on the lease, that there was other children occupying the apartment.
Thank you. And isn't it true that subsequent to that conversation, you filed an eviction action against Ms. Agua for non-payment of rent?
I don't believe so.
So you did not receive money from Keystone on behalf of Ms. Agua at the end of December?
For that, yes, we did have to serve her the letter. We never officially took her to court. We just served her the one letter so that she could get the help from Keystone. Yes, I did try my best to try and help her with her back rent from the pandemic, as I did with all my other tenants.
Yes, and thank you for making that clear that you did not actually file a case and that you were assisting them. So you did make affirmative efforts to continue to collect rent on this unit, so, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which is right. So you said that the lease, the violation of the lease for children under 17 to not be supervised. But isn't it true that that restriction only applies
after 10 p.m.? No, that is a rule that we have in general for all children under 17 playing outside.
Can you point me to where it says that in the lease?
Go through it real quick. I don't see it. The copy of the lease that I have that My manager, Patricia Brown, printed out for me is missing some pages.
Okay.
The building, minimize that. Building is open. You can get in and see her whole lease. Ran out of here.
Is it possible that Ms. Moreno, that it's in the rules and regulations?
Yes, that is very possible.
Can you go to the paragraph? Or I suppose, this document was also submitted with the file. The court, Mr. Thornton, will you stipulate to the admission of the rules and regulations?
I believe it's attached to the lease that was admitted as evidence, so.
I just wanted to make sure that if it's already been admitted, then we don't have a problem. So, Ms. Moreno, can you go to the paragraph that says curfew?
Yes.
Can you read the first sentence for me?
No one under 17 years of age shall be allowed in any common area from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. unless accompanied by a lease.
Thank you. So, is it a violation for children to play in the park?
No. According to the lease, no.
Is it a violation according to something else?
I mean, and morally maybe, but not according to the lease, no.
Has any damage come? Have you been informed, have you ever received any reports of any damage because Agua's children have walked to the park?
Of any damage?
Yeah.
No.
So there hasn't been any issues with her children?
Of them destroying or no, nothing like that. Her kids are actually, they seem very nice. I've talked to them a few times and they're very well mannered. They seem very respectable and nice. I know that the time that I've contacted her, I've just been concerned about her kids walking all the way to another complex behind the complex without an adult. The kids are walking by themselves to the park where nobody can see them.
Is that, yeah, okay. So that's not a violation of the lease?
No.
What is the relationship between you and Ms. Brown?
The relationship between us, she's my manager.
So does she work in your office?
Sometimes she does.
Do you report to her?
I do, yes.
Is she the only person you report to?
Her, and every now and then I'll report some information to the owners, depending on what they're wanting.
Who are the owners?
The owners is Jason DeVeers and Allison Poster. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name.
I'm not sure why it's relevant, but the actual owners are, the titled owners are an LLC, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Ms. Moreno, have you ever spoken, you mentioned that was it Mr. Blair or Mr. Bear?
Blair, I believe is how you pronounce it.
So you mentioned that you had talked to him in person 3 times about Ms. Agua. Did you initiate those conversations?
No, he stops me when I'm walking my hallways, or he'll give me a phone call.
So he contacts you a lot?
He contacted me those 3 times regarding her. I wouldn't say he contacts me a lot.
Have you spoken to other tenants about Ms. Agua?
Just when they have complaints about her.
So you have not yourself gone unprovoked or shared information about Ms. Agua with other tenants?
No. The only time that I've ever spoken about Ms. Agua with other tenants is when they've contacted me regarding her.
Has she ever asked you not to speak with other tenants about her?
Not to speak to other tenants about her. She has asked me not to share her information with other people, which I have stated that I do not. I just address any complaints or issues or questions that anybody has towards me about her. If it's anything personal, I always tell them that's none of their business.
Is it a violation of the lease for children to be in the hallway?
After 10 p.m. if they're under the age of 17.
Have you heard of any issues from any damage that has occurred from the children being in the hallway or any harm that has resulted?
I mean, the only issues that we've had are when tenants called me asking about why the kids are in the hallway unattended without an adult, crying, but that's it. We haven't had any damages to the actual hallway that we know of that is from them.
So you received 2 calls from Mr. Sanders, or he called you twice about children being in the hallway? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Have you heard from Mr. Mailer since this action began?
I did speak to him once to let him know that we did serve the 30-day notice. He had informed me that he was going to try to talk to Miss Ashley and regarding getting out of the apartment, but he did inform me that he is no longer living there and that he is out.
Were you concerned about Ms. Agua's safety in January on that date that we clarified at the beginning of this when she told you about what happened with him?
Was I concerned of her safety? Of course.
Did she tell you anything about what happened? Not to prove that it happened, but just whether she told you about it or not.
I mean, she mentioned that Jonathan was abusive, but that was all she said. She never went into detail about it. She never told me what had happened between them. So I was unaware of any of that. She just told me that he was abusive and that I needed to change the lock on both her door and the front building code.
How did she seem to you?
I'm not sure. She texted all that to me.
Okay. I'll move on from that. Oh, have you ever had any issues with rodents or cockroaches or bugs as a result of the cleanliness of Ms. Agua's apartment?
We've only been in there the one time, and the one time that we were in there, I didn't like fully go into her kitchen and look for pest issues. So at the time, no, I'm going to say no, that I'm aware of. No, I don't know of any pest issues. She has not mentioned anything to me, and neither have the neighbors.
And you've never seen anything?
No.
And so your understanding right now is that there is one adult and 3 children living in the apartment?
Yes.
And just to clarify testimony that you gave to Mr. Thornton, you don't ever require people to have renters and pet insurance, right?
No, we recommend it just because we're not held liable for anything, that any of their property that becomes damaged or stolen or whatever. We recommend it, but I do not require it.
And, okay. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Thorne, anything further of this witness?
Just one point to clarify, Your Honor. Josie, there was some testimony about a demand for non-payment of rent. Was that when Mr. Mailer was still in the apartment?
From my understanding, yes, he was still in the apartment when she needed that help to pay for the back rent.
Okay. Do you recall when that demand was served?
Maybe sometime in September, October. I know Keystone did pay for all of their back rent, plus December and then part of January.
When the notice to quit was served?
That would have been in January. I have it right here. I do not have that notice to quit. I want to say it was around January 7th, possibly, but I don't have it in front of me. I thought I did.
I believe it's part of the court file. It would have been.
It is. Let me
attached.
see if I can find it. Notice to quit was served on January 12th.
Oh.
So Josie, it's accurate to say that any demand for non-payment of rent was served significantly prior to the notice to quit being issued and served?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
That's all I had.
Can I recross, Your Honor?
Yes.
Were you aware that there were additional children living in the apartment at the time that you accepted money from Keystone?
Yes.
Okay. And then you don't remember telling Ms. Agua, and if this is how you're going to be, we will be serving you a 30-day notice? Okay. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
If Keystone paid the rent in September, were you under the understanding that those other children were just there on weekends, or did you know they were permanent tenants at that point?
In September, I had spoken to Jonathan, and he told me that they were just there on weekends and that they were his kids that he had shared custody with another woman.
You were saying?
So I believe we're actually talking about different kids. There were the teenage boy and girl, which are Jonathan's, and then these 3 children, which are all the defendants. So I believe there are actually 5 children altogether. The 3 children that she has there now all are hers. The other 2 children were a teenage girl and a middle school aged boy. Were those the children you were aware that were there on weekends?
Yes, those are the ones that he told me were there on weekends. But I did ask him if there were anywhere between 3 to 5 children living in his apartment, and he denied everything, saying that it was just the 2 that he had would come on the weekend. And I told him that I had seen some kids playing outside, that they were from his apartment. He claimed that those were the ones that he gets on the weekend, and that sometimes they would come during a weekday just for a few hours. So I was under the impression for a very long time that those 2 children that are Miss Ashley's, I thought they were Jonathan.
All right, so at some point, Jonathan left, the other kids left, and 2 other of the defendant's children moved in. The only one on the lease is Josiah, and at some point, the other 2 children moved in. When did you become aware of that?
I probably became aware of those children that they were actually hers sometime maybe in November.
Your Honor, may I ask or ask a couple of questions about what you're asking?
Yes, certainly.
Ms. Moreno, did you not testify earlier this morning that you first contacted Jonathan and that you then subsequently contacted Ms. Agua and she thought that he had told you, and that conversation with Ms. Agua that clarified things was in October?
Late October, early November, but I wouldn't know the exact date, but I would say it was around that time, around late October, early November.
And then is it possible that you sent Ms. Agua a text message that said, "Hi, Ashley, just wanted to check on November 11th. Hi, Ashley, just wanted to check if you were able to get a hold of someone from Keystone. I know they said they were accepting applications until the end of November, so try to contact them before the end of the month, please." Is that possible?
Might have been, yes.
Would that have been the beginning of the process?
That would have been. I do know that initially when we had tried to get her help from Keystone, there was a small hiccup of paperwork between her and Keystone. I'm not exactly sure what was it, but there was a small delay in it. So.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Moreno. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, anything further?
Not for me, Your Honor.
All right. At any point, did she ever officially tell you that the other two children were there and their names and ages?
Officially, no. I was never made aware of names or ages of any of the children. I kind of just had to find out on my own.
Thank you.
Do you normally ascertain the ages of the children on leases?
Yes, I'll normally ask for their ages, yes.
But it's not officially a part of the lease.
No, I don't write their ages down on the lease, no, but I will ask for their ages and how many children so that we could, place them in the correct unit.
I have nothing to do, Your Honor.
Mr. Thornton?
I have no further witnesses, Your Honor.
If that's the case, I asked Mr. Thornton if he was planning, the witnesses he was planning to call. He told me he was planning to call Ms. Brown as well, and so I did reserve a few questions for her. So.
All right, well, you certainly have a right to question her. Ms. Moreno, would you bring Patricia Brown in and you could stay there now. You finished testifying. Would you ask Ms. Brown to come in?
Let me grab her.
And just for the record, Your Honor, I did tell Ms. Bauer that, but based on Ms. Moreno's testimony, I didn't feel we needed to take the court's time with Ms. Brown.
That's fine. I appreciate that. I think anything she said may have been duplicative of what this witness had to say, but she's here and she wants to question her, so we might as well make her available. I have a meeting at noon, but we may have to go into the lunch hour somewhat. So would you bring Ms. Brown in, please? So before we get to that, the plaintiff rests.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Brown, thank you for your patience in more ways than one. Would you raise your right hand, please? You swear or affirm any testimony you're about to give here will be true to the best of your knowledge and belief.
Yes, I do.
Would you state your name, please?
Patricia Brown. I go by Trish.
You go by Trish, T-R-I-S-H?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Bauer has some questions for you. You're under oath. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Brown. What is your title at this point?
I own a property management company, all about the properties. I started out as a loan property manager for several in Sturgis. Now I manage several throughout the state. And Josie is one of my assistant managers for the Sturgis area.
So you own the property management. I'm sorry. Thank you. Do you have a problem with the behavior of the children at your apartment?
Can we clarify what children we're talking about?
Yes. I will withdraw my question and rephrase. Have you been made aware of complaints of children related to Ms. Agua's apartment?
The complaints that I am aware of, and sometimes I do get calls from tenants or text messages, being that they have known me for years in Sturgis and my requirements on my lease and the requirements of the tenants and children. So I get complaints sometimes, but a lot of times I let the managers in all of my different communities handle it because they follow the lease. But the complaints that I have had from these tenants in the 1015B4 has mainly been the bikes or the strollers that are left in the entranceway into the hallway, so that when one of my other tenants walk into the hallway to get into their apartment, they have been unable because of the children's bicycles. And at that point, I typically would call Josie and say, hey, can you contact B4 and let them know to move the bikes so that the other tenants don't trip over their bikes and they can have free access to their apartment. Basically, that has been it in regards to the children.
Have you ever expressed to anyone else your concern about Ms. Agua's children?
No.
Have you ever mentioned a concern about Child Protective Services?
No. I'm a very busy. I have 415 units throughout Michigan. I don't typically get involved personally with each tenant and my manager. Are there times that throughout all of my tenancies that I have concerns with children? Yeah, there are. Do I discuss that with other tenants? Absolutely not. Do I discuss it with my managers? Absolutely. If they are not following the lease is a contract. The lease is there for the protection of the owners, the managers, and the tenants, and the children. That's why the lease is put in place. And the only reason this really came about is because of too many people in a one-bedroom apartment, and there was fraud given on the lease in regards to how many people were going to be in the apartment. So I have to follow that lease. My managers have to follow that lease. Tenants have to follow that lease. So typically, honestly, if somebody lies on a lease, it's like lying on an application. You can be terminated from that. And it's the safety that's involved when there's too many people. Plus, if you don't have all the people on a lease and there's a fire or there's something that happens, the fire department or the police or the manager are only looking for a certain amount of people. There could be 2 more children in there and you wouldn't even know it because of what was stated on the lease. So when things like this occur is when I need to get involved to make sure that everybody is following the protocol on the lease.
So you believe, based on what you just said, that Ms. Agua lied on her lease?
Absolutely.
And you believe she committed fraud?
If you do not say how many people are living in that apartment when you sign a lease, would that not be lying on a lease?
Well, you don't ask the questions, you just try to answer them.
Was that to me, Your Honor?
No, she asked you a question, and that witnesses do that from time to time, and the judges admonish them that you don't ask the questions, the lawyer does.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, you didn't ever tell anybody that you saw and were concerned about Ms. Agua's children playing on a snowbank?
No. At a lot of my apartment complexes, I check in, I do drive-throughs every now and then. If we need to go over paperwork, I may go to the office to see one of my managers, but absolutely not. I couldn't point her children out from any other child that I know. The court hearing that we had last week was the first time I have ever seen Miss Ashley. And today, I don't know them. You know what I mean?
Children. That's not the first time you've seen her children, though.
I have never seen her children.
Ms. Brown, I'd like to remind you that you are under oath right now.
I am under oath, yes.
If Ms. Bauer has evidence to come forward, bring it, I guess.
Mr. Thornton, you were there.
I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Where?
Well, there are some rules about what I can and can't say based on settlement discussions, but
Your
I
Honor,
have never been
Your Honor,
anywhere
can we
with.
have a bench
Stop,
conversation?
stop. Only one person can question at a time. So where are you going? She's your witness. This isn't cross-examination, it's direct. You called her. She gave you an answer you didn't like, and then you're doing some round left-handed way to try to impeach your own witness. And then you won't tell us what it is. And then you're making yourself a witness. So say, well, wasn't it true you saw the children at such and such time and place? You can ask that, but that's a leading question.
Yeah.
So,
Your Honor, I just tried to ask you for a bench count vote because I was trying to respect the integrity of the rules of evidence to the best that I have been able to follow them, because I understand that statements made in attempts at settlement are inadmissible. But the basis for what I am asking is what Ms. Brown told to me on this Zoom call last meeting when I asked you if we could all come together and speak.
yes. All right, you can inquire. Did you tell me X, Y, Z?
Ms. Brown, did you tell me last week that you saw Ms. Agua's children on a snowbank and that you were concerned about that?
I never spoke to you last week. I was in the court hearing, but I was put into another room, but I do not remember speaking to you. But now I might have, but like I said, I have 410 units that I manage. My biggest concern is safety for all of my tenants, my management, following the lease, and taking care of any issues that have to be taken care of by law. The only time that I have ever walked into 1015 and even knocked on the door was on the second city inspection. And it was me that knocked on the door, and Ashley did not come to the door, and we just left the apartment. I do not remember telling you that I have seen children on a snowbank at all.
You don't remember telling me that you had concerns about her children's safety and that you thought she was a terrible mother?
Absolutely not.
As a
and
mother,
for the
you're
record,
stuck.
Your Honor, I don't remember that.
I have never spoken to you. I'm sorry, Miss Bauer.
All
but
right, stop. This is impeachment on a collateral matter of your own witness, and I'm not going to put you and Mr. Thornton under oath. The questions are going, plus it doesn't matter. Did you say, I think you're a terrible mother? If she, okay, if she didn't, okay, that doesn't have to do with anything pled in the complaint. So this line of questioning can come to a close.
Understood, Your Honor. Ms. Brown, I'd like you to turn to the pet policy, I'd like you to turn to paragraph 22 of the lease. And while you're doing that, who is responsible for assessing fees against tenants?
I'm sorry?
Who is responsible for charging tenants fees? Like, is the tenant, I guess, what is your policy for putting amounts on a ledger that have been billed to a tenant? Who is responsible for that?
My managers?
It's not the tenants.
No, the tenants do not set fees.
So it's okay.
Which page?
Paragraph 22, which is the paragraph pled in the complaint.
Yes.
Okay. What does the first sentence of paragraph 22 say?
Tenant shall not harbor or house any animals of any types without the prior written consent of the property owner.
And you can read the next sentence. I'm interested in the sentence following, but you can read the next sentence. And will you read the next sentence?
If unauthorized animals are found on the premises, there will be a $50 per animal fine assessed until the animal is removed. Liability insurance must be in place with the minimum limit of $500,000 for liability coverage to have a pet in approved units.
Okay,
Copy
that's
of the
good.
policy must be given to the property manager before time of move-in.
So if someone does have a pet Is that grounds based on what you just read to terminate the person's tenancy?
It is, but we do make exceptions for tenants if they do come to us and they do put that $250 non-refundable deposit down at a later date and a $25 added fee to their lease, then we do work with them. I feel as if we are on trial here when we try to, in the best.
Stop. She's not doing a very well job of managing you, but she's your witness, and so you are only supposed to answer the questions that are asked. She asks a question that takes 4 words to answer it, and you speak 9 paragraphs, and she doesn't stop you. But just try to answer the question that she asks. I know how you feel. Litigants often feel that way, but that wasn't responsive to her question.
And I guess I apologize, Your Honor. I thought that the insights that Ms. Brown was offering were valuable but I won't waste the court's time, so I understand your desire that I control the witness. Ms. Brown, you do not always terminate tenants' leases. Just to understand what you just said, you do not always terminate tenant leases if the tenant is found to have a pet.
No, because typically we ask them for the deposit and the raised rent, and they comply.
Ms. Brown, I'm going to try to honor the judge's wishes. No, you do not always terminate the tenancy, and you did testify a few minutes ago that it is the manager's responsibility for assessing the fine. So a tenant is required to have written permission, right? That was your testimony a second ago? I guess I'll withdraw that question because it was leading and I didn't mean it to be. Can you flip to the pet policy addendum, Ms. Brown, please? Ms. Brown, or do you have it in front of you? I'm sorry.
I'm on my accounting program right now, and yes.
That's okay. I didn't mean to rush you at it, so I apologize for that. Is this addendum signed by, who has signed this policy addendum?
Myself, Ashley, and Jonathan.
And can you read the very first sentence of this policy addendum?
Cats are welcome in all units. No dogs allowed.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Brown. So this is a separate written agreement, right?
Yes, but you have to continue to read the whole. It's still a text.
Well, I submit that to the court that the language is ambiguous. And I guess to clarify some testimony that was given by your manager, do you require people who have pets to have an insurance policy?
I'm sorry?
Well, according to the lease, or I guess, do you require tenants who have pets to have insurance, pet insurance?
Pet insurance? No, I require them to pay the pet deposit and the $25 amount. And this is an owner's policy so that if there is damage, that money goes towards repair.
So, Ms. Brown, you're saying that the lease paragraph is imposing obligations on the manager. This paragraph in the lease that you read a few minutes ago to the court about liability insurance.
Your Honor, I would state that the lease stands on its own. If she's asking as far as enforcement, that's a different issue, but the lease stands on its own.
And I was in part asking an enforcement question and I guess an interpretation question, but as you state, the lease stands on its own. So I will conclude on that front. Ms. Brown, as you've stated or suggested, you have a financial interest in this unit. As a result of Ms. Agua's tenancy, have you suffered any harm from the alleged violations?
Have I suffered?
I guess I'll place a relevancy objection on it.
How is that relevant?
Well, the remedy for breach is only appropriate for the harm incurred. It is a bit of a legal question, but
well, there's a lease. We're not talking general common law. We're talking interpretation of the lease. So the objection is sustained.
Okay. Give me just a second, Your Honor. Oh, yeah. Ms. Brown, you mentioned that safety is a concern for you as an owner. If a tenant is facing domestic violence or abuse would it be appropriate for a tenant to call the police?
Absolutely.
Would that result in a report being written up against that tenant violation?
If I have been notified, yes.
Wait, are you saying that tenants are required to notify you that they called law enforcement because of a domestic violence situation?
Or their manager, yes. And if a police report was written up in regards to, I can't do things on hearsay. I have to have a police report on disturbances or abuse or violence.
In order to do what?
If there is a police report and it is a proven fact that there is violence and abuse by either party, both tenants may, by law, be evicted within 24 hours, depending on the circumstances of it and the police report. But I have never received a police report in regards to abuse or anything.
With regards to Ms. Agua?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have nothing further. Thank you. Mr. Thornton, choose your witness.
Your Honor, I do have to clarify a couple of points. Trish, could you go back to the pet policy addendum? And under the beginning of the second paragraph, could you read the sentence that Ms. Bauer did not want you to read?
Tenants also agree to the following policies set in forth.
No. The paragraph above that.
Tenants shall not harbor or house any animals or any type without the prior written consent of the property owner. Any exceptions to this clause are to be noted on lease and signed by all parties.
That's enough. So you interpret any animals to include cats, is that correct?
Cats, anything, yes.
Are you, to your knowledge, is Vista Point LLC attempting to evict Ms. Agua because she may have called the police for a domestic disturbance?
No.
And do you enforce your pet policy on anybody that is found to have a pet that hasn't notified the complex and gotten the written permission of the manager?
Yes.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
All right.
May I redirect?
Yes.
Mr. Thornton asked if you enforce your policy against people who violate, but I asked if that was if you would bring a termination action against someone found to not have a written pet policy, and you told me that you would work with the tenant sometimes. Is that true?
We will work with a tenant if they will work with us. Absolutely. We'll work with any tenant in regards to any issue that a tenant may have.
Okay. And then, okay. Picking up where Mr. Thornton left off, will you read the next sentence in the pet policy addendum?
I can read it, but go ahead.
The next sentence, the next paragraph.
Next sentence. With if
unauthorized animals are found on the premises, there will be a $50 a day per animal fine assessed until the animal or animals are removed.
Okay, that's enough, Ms. Brown. Thank you. I'm not hiding anything. I'm just trying to be respectful of the court's time on that. So did you ever attempt to assess a fine against Ms. Agua for the presence of her cats?
No, and I have not done that to several of my tenants because they do cooperate.
It's crazy how this woman is making it look like just against her unprovoked when we're dealing with a tenant who lied on the lease, trashed the apartment, ignored noise complaints, skipped pet fees, and now wants sympathy? Hard pass.
But you haven't even asked Ms. Agua for that fine?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, anything further? Anything further, Lance?
No.
Ms. Agua, are the cats still there?
Yes, sir.
That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have an inspection during lunch. All right, we're going to resume at 1 o'clock. Do you have any further testimony or evidence, Ms. Bauer?
I wish I could ask Ms. Agua to clarify a little bit on the question you just asked her, but.
We have not unlimited time and resources. We've already taken a large block of time for this case. When we resume at 1, I have a meeting at noon, let's say 1:15, we're going to hear argument regarding the motion to terminate this tenancy. So do you have additional evidence you wish to produce?
No, Your Honor.
All right, does the defense rest?
The defense will rest. Yes.
All right, I have pretrials starting at 1:30, but 2 of the cases settled. So I don't have other obligations until 2:30. So we'll resume at 1:15 and hopefully we can come to ruling at that time. I'll see you all at 1:15.
Your Honor, is
Yes.
there not going to be an inspection then at noon today, or?
Do you wish to have one?
Sure, I don't think it would hurt.
All right, what's your position, Ms. Bauer?
I guess they seem to be arguing that the reason they're terminating this tenancy is exclusively to do with the
Your testimony was that your client mopped and cleaned the apartment, or your position was. I'd be interested in knowing what it looks like right now. If you don't wish me to do it, I won't. If you allow it, I'll ask the managers to go in and inspect it and take photographs.
I guess I have not discussed this with my client because we had to relocate due to power issues. I think it's a snapshot in time, and I don't know even if it's a mess. Is that a breach of the lease?
All right, I'm assuming it is a mess.
I have no idea, Your Honor.
All
I
right.
don't know.
I'd asked you to ask her, but apparently had some logistical problems. All right, we'll go with what we have. It certainly was a mess on January 27th. All right, we'll resume at 1:15.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did the witnesses need to appear back?
No, they do not. They're welcome to, but they don't have to.